Photoshop is the industry's leading raster editing application. And you may ask, what is raster mean? Well, raster images are made up of pixels, which is short for picture element. They are also called bitmap analysis, often the flash documentation. It came from a bit either being mapped on or off to your screen. Raster images have a limited scalability. It's very dependent on the dimensions of your image and starting resolution. There is always a fixed or perfect size and resolution that will work for your intended output, whether you are a web designer, a print designer, or a hybrid that might be doing what we print Mobo, or a video premiere, or After Effects user. Vector is the opposite type of image formats. Vector is also called Bezier curves, named after Pierre Bezier, a car designer for Renault in the 1920s. The difference between raster and vector is pixels versus points. Points use math in order to calculate the curves and lines. A point-based image or a vector image is infinitely scalable. You could print it on a business card or a billboard, and it would always look sharp and crisp. Vectors are known to be smaller files, typically than raster images. Every pixel being on and off in RGB, you could see that in your Photoshop channels, red, green, and blue, or a pixel being on and off in the print workspace of CMYK, cyan, magenta, yellow, and black would be much bigger than a vector object that simply has a shape with a fill color or stroke color. Stroke is your outline or border. Let's take a look at how the quality is impacted by raster or vector. In this Photoshop document, in the Layers panel, I have a rasterized version of this rose. I have enlarged it 500%, so you could see that it's starting to lose quality compared to the original one in the background. If I were to select the rose rasterized and scaled and use Edit Free Transform to scale it up another 500%, I can do that to the options bar across the top. Link the proportions, double-click, and type 500, and there, when I press Return or Enter to accept the scale, you could see every pixel, especially before I hit Enter. Photoshop does soften images as they are scaled up. If feel little bit of blurring or a lot of blurring depending on your starting resolution. If I turn on the vector rose that was scaled up to 500% and again go to Edit, Free Transform, and link my proportions one more time in the options bar, and it remembered that I had scaled this one up 400% before. So I will just go all the way to 1000. I double click, typed in 1000, press Return or Enter twice, once to accept the 1000 and the second to complete the scale. You notice the edges are always sharp and smooth in comparison to the other rows in the background. And the way I got both of these roses was to trace the original photo in Illustrator with its Live Trace feature. I will go to my File menu and choose Revert to go back to the last saved version of this document, and you could see the raster rose in the upper right, the vector rose in the lower left. So moral to the story, Photoshop is a raster editing application. It manipulates pixels which have a fixed size and the starting resolution depending on the scan or the camera that captured it or your settings when you started a new document in Photoshop. The vector or Bezier curve images are typically drawn from scratch in Adobe Illustrator, or a scan is taken and traced in Adobe Illustrator. In fact, this is a digital photo that I took that was traced in Adobe Illustrator. So I hope this gives you a good overview of what Photoshop is and what its intended uses are.